Let's start and welcome to the first meeting of the public accounts. We're just going to ask the members to introduce themselves. Next to me is Mr. Dustin Davids, our procedural officer, and then I'm going to give over to the AG to introduce them, and then they'll take us through the briefing. Over to you, honourable members.
Good afternoon. I'm Gillian Bosman, and I'm standing in as an alternate for member Noma French Mbombo.
Afternoon, Chair. I am Leon van Wyk, a member of this committee.
Afternoon, Chair. I'm Donita Stevens.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Khalid Sayed, member of the Committee on the Premier and Constitutional Development.
Good afternoon. My name is Pet Lekker.
Good afternoon. I'm Benedicta van Minnen, permanent member of this committee.
Thank you very much. Is there any members online? Nobody that I see, nothing. Over to you, AG.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members. My name is Thamina Nakadin. I'm the Senior Manager responsible for the Department of the Premier.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon, honourable members. I'm Tasneem Adams, the Stakeholder Liaison Manager responsible for the AGSA's Western Cape office.
Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, Chairperson. I'm Sepo Musolmi from the Auditor General Office. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introductions. Can we ask Ms. Nakadin to proceed? Oh, maybe at the back. Do you want to introduce yourself? Sorry.
Good afternoon, Ignatius Fourie. I'm also a senior manager from the Auditor General.
Thank you very much. And then we have Mr. Barnett. Can you introduce yourself? Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, Premier and DG. Welcome to our first scope of meeting here with the Department of the Premier. We're going to do the introductions now, members first, and then I'll hand over to the Premier and the DG. Over to you, members. And next to me is Mr. Dustin Davids, our procedural officer, and Ms. Lizette Kluter at the back, senior procedural officer. Over to you.
Good afternoon. I'm Gillian Postman, and I'm standing in for member Noma French Mbombo.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Premier and Director General and officials and other honourable members. I'm a member of the Public Accounts Committee.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Khalid Sayed. I'm a member of the Committee on the Premier.
Good afternoon. My name is Nomin Kondlo. I'm an alternate to this committee.
Good afternoon. My name is Pat Lecker.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Benedicta van Minden, a permanent member of SCOPA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone online that needs introductions? Any apologies? Member Petrus. Apology for Member Petrus. Premier, over to you and the DG.
First one, introductions?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Alan Wendy, Brent.
Chair, good afternoon. Also, good afternoon to the members. Harry Malila, I'm the DG in AO of Fort 1.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I'm Driekus Basson, the CFO.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. Henriette Robson, the Head of Corporate Assurance.
Good afternoon, Lucas Buter, Head Legal Services.
Good afternoon, Ihsan Samai, Centre for E-Innovation.
Good afternoon, Louise Estreiser, People Management.
Good afternoon, Ritvan van Rensburg, Provincial Forensic Services.
Good afternoon, everyone. Blanche Cancross, Internal Audit.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Akila Haq, Enterprise Risk Management.
Good afternoon, everybody. Anissa Bihardin, Internal Audit.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sally Martin, Internal Audit.
Good afternoon, Nozipo Maolwana, DG's Office.
Good afternoon, Robert Shaw, Officer of the DG.
Afternoon, everybody. Niku Boshoff, Legal Services.
Is that all the introductions? Thank you very much for the introductions. Premier, over to you for introductory remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And obviously there's some members that overlap from this morning, but I'll try to keep it quite short because obviously this is about our audit outcomes and our financial management. We believe in good governance. We believe in strong ethics and getting it right. For the last 5 years, since I became the Premier, I've been always advocating that a good audit outcome, an unqualified audit, is a good habit to have. Just make sure it's a habit. It's not the focus. It's what we do. Because then when you get that right, then you can get to the service delivery and everything that goes with it. And I must say that I think we're building up an interesting relationship now with the Auditor General, how we move to that next level of compliance, that next level of trust, and that next level of measurement, because now we're moving to what is the lived experience of the citizen on the ground. And that's actually where it is, because when you're sitting in the chamber or you're sitting in the boardroom and you talk about a clean audit, and people out there, they can't eat a clean audit. A clean audit doesn't come out of a running tap. A clean audit, so obviously that is the basis. Perhaps the last thing I want to say is just thank you very much to the team, to get to these outcomes and this kind of financial stability. Doesn't just happen. Even if we're moving towards a habit, it takes a lot of work, a lot of focus. So I must say, whether you're in finance or internal audit, or you're the audit committee, or even the Auditor General, and the role that everyone plays, and how we bring it all together with the with the DG and the top management, how you identify where your risks are, you zoom in, you deal with your risks, so you move on. And so perhaps I'll just say to everybody involved, thank you very much. I'll let DG talk about how many times he's had a clean audit.
Chair, thank you very much. From our side, obviously, our governance achievements are set out in Part C of our annual report. I think it's really self-explanatory. On risk management, we've got all our necessary processes in place. We've got a very active GovCom that consists out of our executive management team, and all matters relating to governance gets discussed in there. And you can see, Chair, from our report that all our EXCO members attended all the discussions. And then, as time goes on, we also pull in, non-EXCO members into our GovCom discussions. All our key activities of our GovCom is set out quite clearly. We follow our TOR, almost to the letter, and we also use our GovCom environment to manage the risk, in the department, whether it's from a performance perspective or even from a financial or non-financial perspective. We also deal, with any fraud and corruption matters, quite swiftly, whether it's internal or external. And obviously, we've got a very active internal control unit in place in the department that thoroughly investigates many of these matters. From an ethics perspective, we also obviously minimize any conflict of interest and make sure that anything gets reported, particularly in that space. We also deal with health and safety matters. I've got no issue with that. Chair, under point 7, we've also got no issues outstanding as it relates to the committee on the premier and constitutional matters. We also have no matters outstanding as it relates to SCOPA from the previous term. As Premier has indicated, I think this is our 10th clean audit, but for me, it's not just about a clean audit. We're shifting our agenda to, how things are looking outside. And obviously from where I'm sitting, it's not just only about the clean audit, but also about the number of matters that's raised annually. And I also gauge sort of our governance levels based on the number of comments and stuff that we actually received throughout the audit process. So institutionally, Chair, from a governance perspective, I'm quite proud of what we've achieved. We will talk about our spending matters, but this morning in our session at the Standing Committee, I reported that we spent 98.8% of just over 2 billion rand budget. So it's a mere 1.2% underspending, and there are reasons also for that. There were no reason to modify our annual financial statements. I'm sure that's been reported previously. Our engagement with the audit committee, there's no issue there. We've got robust engagements at an audit committee level, and I'm sure, our audit committee chair have also reported accordingly, but the audit committee report is also in the statements. I have spoken about our internal audit as well as our internal committee processes, and all our other issues as it relates to governance transversely has also been in place. On a monthly basis, I also report to the Premier on the activity of this department, and obviously also looking at the stuff through a risk lens. So there's no issue with compliance with reporting, and also dispensing with my accounting officer responsibilities in terms of the requirements of the PFMA. We had no issues on our performance information. In fact, many of our objectives we have exceeded. There are no underperformance on any of our indicators. And for that, I'm also very grateful to the team. Our report, our engagement with the auditors are always robust also, but there's been no issue, that's been that I need to report over here. So I think from my side as an accounting officer, I'm quite happy with the outcome of our governance report as set out in section C of my annual report. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Premier and DG. Members, as I said earlier, I'm going to allow 2 questions per member, and then if there's pressing issues, we'll ask another round. So 2 questions per member. If there's anything that's not that we're not going to tackle with the opening remarks of the Premier and the DG is fine, but if we can tackle those issues that you're going to ask in later in the report, then we're not going to ask that questions now. But if there's something that's not related and you want to ask the question, then we can delve into that. So I'm going to allow for questions, but if we're going to deal with it in the report, then we don't ask the questions now, we'll ask when we get there. Okay. Is there any questions before I just want to say how we're going to do this report, and then we're going to take it from there. Can I go ahead with how? So what we have of course, part C. That is 102 to 122. I'm going to divide that in two from 102 to 112 and then 113 to 122. So that I'm going to allow members from 102 to 112. And that's governance. And then we have PFMA compliance. That is pages, that's part E, pages 156 to 169, but it's actually 158 to 168. So I'm going to deal with that. So I'm going to ask questions on that, and then questions on this. And then after that, we'll move to the financial information after that. Like I said, what I just want fairness. So that's why I said 2 questions per member. If you have another, if the question's not asked, I'll give another opportunity. So that is how we're going to do it. And when we go to part F, we have from 173 to 180, we have the Order General Report and the annexures. We'll deal with that first. And then we'll get to the appropriation statement. That's 181 with notes and annexures. And then we'll go through it like that. But I want to divide it because we've all read the report. We know our questions. I've got my question lined up, and we're going to do it as that. Is it fine, members? Can we move on that? Okay, thank you very much. So now I'm going to open governance, and that is part C from 102 to 112. Questions on those pages over members. Member Pat Lekker is first, then Member Nokontlo. Okay, is there any? Okay, we'll see, and then we'll take it from the Member Pat Lekker first.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon again. Mine, Chair, is on page 108, table 3.2, under fraud and corruption. I want to get an understanding, Chair, in respect to the table 3.2 under the nature and investigation outcome of closed cases. I want to understand, Chair, as to what cases are these, or what case is this, which was said to have been concluded with allegations of fraud, which were substantiated, and the matter was then reported to SAPS. So my question is, what are the details of this particular case? And 2, Chair, going back to page 106, under the key risk considered and addressed during the year, I want to understand under number 4, the transversal strategies to improve service delivery are not effectively implemented. Just want to get an understanding or some kind of details as to what it is exactly that is referred to here as number 4. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Nokontlo, you next.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on page 106. If the Premier and the team can explain when they say on number 5, the ICT of the provincial government is compromised. What does that mean? What's the level of that? Should we be worried as a key risk to be addressed? And then the second one on page 107 on the fraud and corruption with the Provincial Forensic Services, one understands, and if I'm incorrect, please correct me, that this unit is not necessarily serving only the Premier's office. It's an office that deals with the entire department. So if so, is this the number of cases that were dealt with in the reporting year, the only cases that were dealt with by the PFS, or these relate to only the department of the Premier? And if not, where do the other cases, because obviously this unit gets to work within the Premier's office as part of its coordinating mandate, and therefore its work needs to be accounted for in here. So I just want to get that information. Thank you.
Thank Okay, so that's the first round of questions. We'll ask the department. Maybe I don't know how you're going to jump in, if you just want to pass it on or you want to comment first. We'll do it your way.
English. It's just English.
Yeah. Chair, no, thank you very much for the questions. I mean, I want to confirm the number of cases reported on page 108. That's only in relation to the Department of the Premier. So it's the 1 April's 1 case, new cases 1, closed cases 2. So at the end of the year, end of March, we had 0 cases. You'll see the same report in each department. Because obviously it's under governance, the same as with the financial statements. We do exactly the same, with regards to HR, where we deliver a service on behalf of each of the different accounting officers. We don't account for what goes on in each of the different departments. So if the member looks at each department, you will find similar information on there. The issue on page 106, and I mean, I'm going to respond to both questions of Member Nkontlo as well as our Member Lekker. I mean, those key risks doesn't necessarily mean that those risks have materialized. So what we do as a governance committee, when the year starts, then we say, what are those risks that we will potentially face in this year, or even as we go along in the year, that might trip us up as a department, or that might stand in our way to make sure that we actually deliver our services. So as an example, the issue around onboarding a new service provider for broadband 2.0. When we got to the beginning of the financial year, that was a particular risk. And what we do is we say, if we don't onboard a new service provider, what would then be the risk to us as a department, and what would then be the risk to us as a Western Cape government? So what is written on page 106 in the middle should be seen through the lens of saying, this is a team that have considered all these things that can potentially go wrong, and all of these things obviously sits on our risk register. So obviously CI or IT in this government is our biggest responsibility. It's almost close to 3/4 of our entire budget. I'm sure the members have read in the papers all the issues around, ICT, security risk, people hacking into our systems, systems of big institutions being compromised, and we said as a government, if any of our systems should be compromised, just imagine if a health department or an education department, the systems are compromised and people are able to hack into that system, to what extent that would compromise the entire Western Cape government. That is why we said, one of the biggest risks that we've got is obviously our IT security environment being compromised. But then we don't stop there. We then say, okay, so what are the mitigating factors that we put in place? We've allocated money, as an example, to that particular area, and then we ask our CI team to monitor that consistently to see where are we in terms of those risks potentially materializing, and we actually do an own internal risk assessment. So based on that, I mean, if Sean can probably talk about the ICT system, ICT security issues, the risk of it being compromised, and then I'm also going to ask Zenith to talk to the issue around the transversal strategy to improve service delivery are not effectively implemented. Obviously, that for us is a key issue. It doesn't help having all these indicators, having all the issues from a service delivery perspective, and then the risk that you have is that some of these things may not be implemented. So I'm just going to ask Sean, if you maybe want to go first, and then Zenith just to talk about point 4, and then also point 5.
Thank you, DG, through your chair. So in the year under review, we did not have any cyber security attacks on there were attempted attacks. In actual fact, there are most probably thousands of them daily, but we've been able to manage all of it. So we didn't have any intrusions into our network. There were 1 or 2 cases, NHLS recently, as well as the Department of Health, a third-party system that they run. But in terms of the WCG network, the controls that we've put in place to date, and we're not saying it doesn't mean somebody's not going to be able to get in. We've got a process should somebody be able to get into our network. But to date, for the year under review, no successful attempts. Thanks.
Good afternoon. So there are strategies put in place to manage the potential transversal risks. There are initiatives such as performance dialogues that we hold with all the departments, in particular all those that deal with the implementation of strategies. And then an initiative that we have taken in collaboration with Provincial Treasury is called the integrated performance, where we actually where we actually report on our transversal indicators also, and not only on indicators that is being managed via an annual performance plan. So we actually take into consideration all the other, like example, the provincial strategic plan. So there is a basket of indicators that we actually holistically manage quarter on quarter. And from an outcomes perspective, there's about 90 outcome indicators that we track over historical periods that informs future trajectories. And then in the across 13 departments, we can exactly say how many indicators we actually manage quarter on quarter. But suffice to say, there's also technical assessments that we do very much during the drafting of new annual performance plans, and also very much before the data is being published, in fact, in this annual report. So there's a number of initiatives across the departments. Thank you.
Thank you, Zinat. Ruthven, if you can maybe just deal with the question relating to table 3.2.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, there were 2 cases dealt with during this financial year. My understanding of the question is that the Honourable Lekker wanted to understand the nature of the cases. So the nature, very briefly, is as follows. The first case, there was an allegation of fronting. Our investigation revealed that a bidder in a supply chain process used a holding company's BBB certificate after it had no longer been the subsidiary of that holding company. Following that, we recommended to the Department of the Premier to report the matter to the BBBE Commission, and it was done on 7 June 2023. The second matter was a smaller matter. It's simply an employee presented a fraudulent and fabricated doctor certificate. The investigation revealed, confirmed that, and the matter, during the investigation, the employee resigned. We recommended that the profile and PER be flagged for this individual should he apply to public service again. That was done by the department, and the second recommendation was to report the matter to the police. It was reported, and the matter is at the moment in court. Thank you.
Chair, if I can just maybe add to the first part that DG was reporting on and the risks. I mean, for the enterprise itself, especially in the ICT space, if you remember 2 years ago, we upped the budget spent quite substantially on protecting ourselves, because we've seen what happened at Transnet when they had a problem. We saw one of our municipalities had one of their databases hacked and ransomware placed on it. As you heard now, one of the outside suppliers to the health department also had an issue, and we've got to be able to act very quickly so you can put a wall up, protect the integrity of the organization. But I think, this will be in every report, and of course, they'll all come to SCOPA. But it is the right question to be asking, because I think in the world today, we're seeing more and more of it across the world, this hacking into systems, and we've got to make sure that we're kind of ahead of that curve.
Thank you very much, Member Said first, and then Member Lekker.
Chair, thank you very much. Mine is just a follow-up on the response given to Member Nkondlo's question on the issue of the service provider. So I wanted to know then, why is there a need to onboard a new service provider? What was the problem with the current service provider? Then linked to that also on page 104, risk number 1, unsuccessful timers onboarding. Wanted to also get a sense there, what was the problem? And I want to know that given that the bulk of the budget of this department is just over 1.4 million, of just over 1.4 million is spent on e-innovation. I just wanted to get a sense, as to what's the issue there. Thank you.
Baleka?
Thank you, Chair. The response on the first case in page 108, I would want to get an understanding as to what are the consequences thereof in relation to this BEE certificate that was submitted by the company. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Lekker. DJ?
Chair, on the responses to the questions by Member Syed, there's no issue with the current service provider. I mean, Liquid have been allocated a 10-year contract, to run our broadband services in the Western Cape Government, and that contract came to an end on the 30th of September. And obviously the big risk for us, and I mean, that's why we've got the number 1, this is the unsuccessful times onboarding of service provider to broadband 2.0, is one can just understand if we don't have the broadband services, the implications for, this corporation called Western Cape Government as it relates to education, health, and some of our key government services. And the issue with supply chain, and particularly these big bids, you never know, what can go wrong. And obviously, from where we were sitting in the beginning of the year, we said this is by far our biggest risk. And if anything goes wrong in this bid, whether it's through, the procurement process or final allocation, we're going to sit without a service provider. The last issue on that is obviously this bid was run through CETA. And obviously, we understand that there are many issues at CETA happening, particularly the last 2-3 years. And we were just not entirely sure, how this thing was going to pan out. What we've done as a mitigation, we've gone out on tender quite quickly. We've done an assessment of, what it is that we want to see within broadband 2.0. And I mean, that's also why the funding was received, or actually support was received from the UTDA, which is also disclosed in our financials. That obviously guided us in terms of putting together the new tender. We could actually take it through all the necessary processes before the end of September, and we're just busy now finalizing the TOR. But at the time when we put together, obviously, our risk register, which is in the beginning of April 2023, that was by far the biggest risk, I would say, even of this entire Western Cape Government. So that deals, I think, with both the questions from Mr. Syed. I don't know, Ruthven, do you maybe want to just talk about the consequence management as it relates to the issue on the B certificate and the subsidy?
So the facts of the case was that it was a question of timing to a large extent. The certificate that the bidder used was still valid, but a week before the bid closed, this transfer of the company took place. So we couldn't find intention to defraud, but we, from a zero tolerance perspective, we nonetheless recommended that the matter be reported to the B Commission. And it is within the hands of the Commission, and the Commission can take the matter as a criminal matter following the processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That answers that. Thank you. Are we done with those pages, members? Can we move on to the next pages, 113 to 122? You have members that have questions on 113 to 122. On section C, Member Mkontla, over to you.
6. Yes, I just want to get some information around the management action plans. I see there were 17 and 10 were implemented, 7 in progress. Can you share with us what were the nature of these management action questions from that needed to be implemented? If you can share that with us. Number 2, on 114, the underspending on the 2 staff exits lower than projected spending on external, what exactly were these positions, and were these funded core or non-core posts, if you can provide that, and why there was no spending on them? If you can just give us the information on that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Member Nkondla. Any other questions? No further questions. DG, over to you.
Chair, the underspending primarily relates to, and I think I spoke about it also this morning, obviously the issue around underspending on personnel. It's a very small amount in relation to the total personnel budget that we've got. Our total underspending for the department, as I said earlier, is sitting at 1.2%. And in fact, what we've done, we've also asked the Provincial Treasury for a rollover of that particular amount to deal with some of the pressures that we've actually got in the system in our department. So, Chair, on the underspending of personnel, obviously it relates to the movement of staff. And I mean, as I explained also this morning, when a staff member exits, it takes about 3 to 4 months to actually advertise, go through the process, and to fill a particular position. I mean, on a just over 2 billion in budget, to have a 1.2 million underspend, because obviously you don't also want to incur any unauthorized expenditure. You know, it's as a result of staff exiting the system, and obviously we're going into a process of actually recruiting in the system. Obviously, these positions were funded because obviously it's our total expenditure vis-a-vis what was actually in the budget. And I mean, it's always a difficult matter, Chair, because you can never anticipate. And remember, this happens between basically November, beginning November, and the end of March in a year, because there's no other adjustments budget in between. So you cannot anticipate, you know, who's going to resign, because as soon as somebody resigns, obviously then, you know, whenever that person has exited the system, that money is now suddenly underspent. And our staff complement, we've got about close to 1,000 staff members, close to 1,000 staff members in the department. And I mean, to have a small underspending like that, Chair, is in itself difficult to manage. I don't know, Driekus, on page 116, if you maybe just want to talk about more or less in the middle, it's the coordination of internal audit processes and then the management of the action plans. 10 has been implemented out of the 17, and 7 of them is currently in progress. But I mean, probably at the time of writing this, all those plans probably would have been implemented.
Thanks, Chair. Just to explain what happens there, internal audit will come and do some work on page 119. There are some bullets in the middle. Those were the areas covered by internal audit. Transfer payments was a green report, so there were no findings. All the other areas, some of them had findings. Now, internal audit has a follow-up process, which is after they will normally agree a date for action. Then they'll follow up about 3 months later. In our department, we don't wait. We're not reactive. So internal control, this is the tasks of internal control on page 116. They have a proactive follow-up that they do so that we ensure that people actually work on the stuff while there's time to work on it, and don't wait for a follow-up by external or internal audit before they start working. So all of these, it's just that of the 17 actions, 10 were implemented and 7 were still in progress as at the end of March. It doesn't mean they're not, they haven't been completed. It was just at that time we had to cut off. Hope that assists. We can also provide info if necessary.
I must also indicate the implementation of action plans, you know, particularly those ones from internal audit, is not an issue in this department. I mean, we discuss it quite actively at our GovCom meetings. I mean, our internal audit senior manager that's responsible for our vote provides regular feedback and regular reports. In fact, I also report at the audit committee, you know, on it, and it's one matter that the audit committee zooms into. So I'm not concerned about it. And as Driekus has said, I mean, if I must pull a report now, then all of those things would have been implemented. It's really just an issue of timing.
Member Nkondla, over to you.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Chair, I think I would appreciate, and I think thanks for the responses, but I would appreciate if the department takes note that, look, I don't think when we ask questions and when we come and present here, it's really about casting aspersions on your ability. So if you're not going to be able to provide us the information and say the matter is a minor issue you would have responded to, it doesn't help us as member to understand what would have happened. So whilst I appreciate your approach or in answering, for me, it leaves me with no information because I asked something specific and you choose to explain to me that it's under control. And I didn't even give an impression that my argument or my question is questioning the ability of the department. So what I would feel comfortable with is that if I ask staff exits where they were, if you say it's negligible, okay, it is. It's 3 staff members, they left at this particular time, this is what we have done. Those are clear things because then I'm empowered to know that yes, something has happened. Management action issues, these were related to A, B, C, and D, and this is where we are. Because now you leave me as a member really disempowered, and that's the role that I'm here to play, is to ask on the basis of what is here, and you deal with the matters on a day-to-day basis. So pardon us because we don't, and we are not in any way casting aspersions. We're not asking questions. We need information. Thank you very much. And I would appreciate if on both questions they could write and provide me the answers.
DG, good.
Chair, we will gladly do so. And I mean, if we didn't give a proper explanation, we'll try and do that. But I've got the 2 matters as the staff members, the exits. That means the 2 million underspent. Where exactly, did that happen, and in which program would the exits take place? And then obviously in relation to the management action plans follow-up, which have been implemented. We've got all those reports, and which ones were in progress. So we will gladly provide that, to the committee.
We will do that in our committee and we'll send you something in writing to do that. Thank you very much, DG. Is there any questions on still part C, 113 to 122? Are we done with that? Can we move over to part E, PFMA compliance report? We're going to do 158 to 168. We're going to do the entire section, part E. Members, is there any questions? I see Member Pat Lecker and then Member Nkontlo. Member Pat Lecker, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. My question, Chair, particularly relates to the notes in page 159, which makes reference to the issues that are under assessment, which relates to no prior approval obtained from the relevant delegated authority for the costs that were incurred. My question would be then, therefore, Chair, what really actually happened and what are the consequence management processes that were undertaken in ensuring that the amounts that were determined, whatever it has happened, has to be corrected. I'm not mentioning this in a particular order, but I think this has to be incorporated throughout the annual report, and therefore, Chair, would following that want to understand in reference to that's page 160, in reference to the irregular expenditure that was removed, which in brackets says was not condoned. What am I to read in this? If it has been removed, am I supposed to think that there's a case of misrepresentation here? And also the issue of unaccountability. I want to understand exactly why was this removed. I'll pause there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Pat Lecker. Member Nkontlo, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm covered, I think, on the irregular expenditure by Member Lecker. I just want to ask on page 163, I think a similar question on the fruitless and wasteful expenditure are recoverable and the one that is not recoverable. I think one sees, I think on page 164, the notes of these being written off. And my understanding, if I'm correct, is that these would have been written off by the provincial treasury. And I just want to understand that when this particular process happens of a matter that then gets to be taken to treasury and it gets to be written off, because when I look at the matter itself, I think it's cases that would emanate from 2022, 2023, and 2023, 2024. So I'm just trying to understand whether these were cases that were then closed in the 2023, 2024, but also what then is the supply chain environment as it relates to this, and what would have been done to correct so that these do not recur. So that's the first one on the fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The second one is that on the invoices that were paid after 30 days due to high volume of invoices received that delayed submissions, what then is the process between the department and the relevant service provider? Because I think why government would want to pay, and I think you've got a very good record of paying within 30 days, but this number of invoices that were not paid, what would you be doing then in trying to minimize the pressure from the service provider side, because of the delays? And I'm assuming that these delays are from the department, not from the service provider itself. So I just want to understand what process do you then engage with the service provider in terms of managing the pressures, because of the delayed payment on your side. Those are the first two from my side for now.
Thank you very much, members. Is that it for the first round? DJ, over to you.
Chair, thank you very much, and also thank you to both members, Lekan and Contra, for the questions. I'm just going to provide an overview of what actually happens in the departments, whether we deal with fruitless and wasteful expenditure or whether we deal with irregular expenditure of either prior years, obviously when it happens inside India. Now, for both of these, we've got our policy frameworks in place. So if there is any hint that we may have incurred any fruitless and wasteful expenditure, we would normally do an investigation. Our internal control unit would actually do an investigation. And if required, we'll also take legal advice on some of the matters before we actually make a decision, on what to do, with the expenditure. Because fruitless and wasteful expenditure that you've incurred, if you haven't taken reasonable care. And obviously, the issue around reasonable care is being assessed as part of it. And then, as part of the process, the department will then make a submission to myself, because obviously I'm the delegated authority to deal, with those particular matters. That deals with fruitless and wasteful, and Trikus, as CFO, will give the detail in relation to each of these matters, as requested by our member Nkondlo. On the issue of irregular expenditure, Chair, we go through the same process. Obviously, what we do to regularize the expenditure, that goes through provincial treasury, because obviously there is a framework that has been issued by the Office of the Accountant General at National Treasury. So we can also supply that framework to the committee, and that framework actually gives you an entire step-by-step process how to deal with regularizing irregular expenditure. And then, when we submit it to PT can say they agree with it to regularize it, because in most of the cases, the expenditure has already taken place. And then, obviously, if PT don't agree, then they can also say that they are not regularizing the expenditure. And then, obviously, we then need to deal with it internally in our own department. In many of the cases, as I said, when we deal with irregular expenditure, it doesn't necessarily mean that those irregular expenditure is necessarily fruitless and wasteful. It's either, non-compliant with a piece of law or legislation, and that's in most of the cases. I mean, if I just refer to the question in terms of the issue around the number of days, Chair, I mean, we've received 4,159 invoices. We've paid 4,152, and then obviously, there were 7 invoices which we could not settle, or we couldn't pay it, due to basically high volumes of invoices received and delayed submissions. Now, sometimes these things happen, in the system, and then we would actually assess it. And what we would normally do, we would investigate it. We wouldn't just leave it as is, because obviously we've got a legislative requirement to pay our invoices within 30 days, and then we would discuss it with the relevant official. Maybe, firstly, go through the disciplinary process. We would see, if there are circumstances that are valid, because sometimes, you maybe have 2 or 3 people responsible for payments in a particular department, and sometimes things happen. Maybe your child gets sick or something happens, that you maybe miss an invoice, whatever the case. But then we would go through those processes, and then if needed, maybe provide them training or make them aware, of the non-compliance that has actually happened in this particular case. And then obviously, I mean, Driekus as a CFO, you can speak about, what is our relationship, obviously, with each of the different service providers that we would also obviously assess, because our job is to pay invoice within 30 days. And I mean, Driekus, I think our average payment of invoices is probably about 12 or 13 days. You can even talk to that. So this is not the norm in the department, but as I said, 7 over 4,159 is a very small percentage. So Driekus, if you can maybe just talk to those cases, and also what it is that we've done, particularly from our side, to deal with the different matters, and then also the condemnation process.
Thanks, Chair. Just on page 159, the 366 and the 27. I think the 27,000 is broken down there, so I need not repeat. On the 366,000, which was under assessment, it is about mostly supply chain matters. Normally, you need the program manager or the branch head's approval if you want to order catering in our department, and some individual went ahead without getting the required approval. Then there's service providers that started work, but the contract only commenced at a later date. It happens especially when there is licenses and things that are ongoing. There's non-compliance to SCM delegations. You cannot approve an award when you've also approved the specification. You can't specify something and then also award the same thing. That's not allowed in terms of segregation. And the last one there would be around where the contract already expired, but the service continued. So it's without a contract, no protection in law. And lastly, there was also a Group D motor vehicle that was booked without the relevant delegated authorities' approval. Now, in these cases, we do investigate. Consequence management has 2 legs. One is disciplinary, where there is mala fide on the side of employees. We haven't found any of that. It's pure errors that were made, behavioral. And then on the other side, it's about how we improve the system, the procurement system, so that we have less of these. So the financial management capacitation plan, I also mentioned this morning, was initiated a couple of years ago. And we take all officials through, or most officials through the procedures, especially in supply chain. We also intervene directly with these officials as things happen, so that they understand that they're accountable and needs to do better. So those are some of the things. What we also change is the delegations. If there are issues that trip officials up unnecessarily, it's just red tape. We then make it leaner without taking away the control. So that's on the consequence management. I think on page 160, there's an amount in the middle at D, which was not condoned and removed. Now you'll see in the narrative below it in the block, the first one was a 4.8 million and a 260,000, which related to a HR matter. That was then not condoned by Provincial Treasury on their assessment. And we were then able to remove that in terms of the National Treasury's IE framework, irregular expenditure framework. And then the 500,000 and the 75,000 were recognized by Treasury on assessment as a valid expense. So the legislation that we proposed to Treasury that was broken or not complied with, they disagreed with that and in fact found that there were other legislation that was applicable. So they disagreed with us. That is then a valid expense, it's not irregular, and we are then able to just remove it from our listing. Also in terms of the IE framework. If we get to 164, going over into 164, 163, 164, the issue was, what are these write-offs? So what happens is when you have a case, and this is under fruitless and wasteful, that first case was not recoverable from the official due to motivated hardship. So all debtors have the right to motivate hardship in relation to a debt that is posed to them. In that case, you are then allowed to write that debt off. And that is a power that the accounting officer holds in terms of delegations. Similarly, if you look at debt prescription, in some of those cases, there is a law on that, the Prescription Act of 1969. If a debt is older than 3 years before you notify the debtor, then obviously they have rights in law to challenge the fact that they should now pay. There is that rule. And we have to then write it off if they're successful. And there was also unsuccessful debt recovery processes where we've exhausted the processes to get hold of an official who has left our employ. It was 1,200 Rand, and we had to then write it off because we simply cannot waste 5,000 or 6,000 Rand in trying to obtain 1,000 Rand. I think that was...
service providers and pay them late.
Yeah, service providers, obviously, if we, not that we have many late payments, you'll see 7 out of 4,159. In the event that it is through our fault that we cannot pay, we do engage the service provider to say, look, what is the situation? Can you allow another 5 days? We missed this run, but we'll pay you the next run. They're normally amenable to that. Also to note, we have not indicated which are small or big suppliers. So if it's a Microsoft, obviously, I mean, they don't have cash flow problems. But the smaller companies, we're very attuned to their cash flow issues. And hence, we also try to get to close as 100% as possible. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. Unfortunately, when you're the chairperson, then all the questions get asked and you get nothing to ask. But just to ask on the 30 days, I mean, it's minute 7. But you know, if I'm just thinking, if you put in a footnote that they were paid in 5 days, then it's, you know, because 7 out of that amount, it's minute. But maybe you just paid it 2 or 3 days after the time, and that blemishes your record actually. You know, so I'm just thinking of a footnote or something to say paid in 5 days. And I wanted to ask, but Ms. Passon did answer that, because you look at who's viable and not viable. You don't want to cripple a small business because you didn't pay the person in time. So just that comment on that. So that's not actually a question, it's just a comment. Members, you've asked all my questions, so now but I'll ask, do you have other questions to ask Member Said? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. On page 166, there's a contract there, the last of the contracts to Sizwe. I just wanted to get a sense, Chair, if the department could explain how they did a variation in that regard by almost 50%, where the where the Treasury regulations, if I'm not mistaken, allows for a 15% variation. So I just wanted to get a sense of that. Thank you.
Sorry, to give an explanation, what would be the reasons of limited bids for the two suppliers that are up there? I think IKNS and InfoBuild.
Thank you, Chair. On the Sizwe matter, those are about extension and expansion. So when it comes to expansions, we are limited to 15% of the total value. However, when it comes to extensions, there's no limit in law at the moment. You can extend the contract as much as you wish. It's not good governance to obviously go, say, double the contract value. So we do look at that. But circumstances do sometimes require us to do something to keep the service going. As you'll see, this is the consolidated ICT service desk that serves all of Western Cape government. When laptops go down or when networks are down, they have to go out and solve these things. So in this case, there were some issues with the bid specification being quite complex. Lots of legal interaction, the evaluation and award process. We also needed to then include a 1-month handover period. So all of that then led to a situation where we had to extend the contract. Then on the limited bids, those two, the first one was KNS Trading. It was around the USB or lighting units. Load shedding packs. So what happened initially, we went out for the matriculants, we went for larger quantities, and the market came back. Those suppliers were not able to do those quantities or deliver those quantities from what was available in South Africa in terms of their own supplies. So what they've then indicated is lower quantity. Obviously, we can't then accept in that process a lower quantity. You have to cancel and go out again. In terms of those suppliers that were able to meet and the other suppliers, we were then able to limit the bid only to those suppliers that responded. And we managed 4,000 packs, and those were then distributed to the DSD facilities for vulnerable residents. Because the matric number is much more, so we had to go out again for that. But that's why we limited, because of the stock levels in the country. The second one, InfoBuild, we had numerous extensions which were due to CITA's inability to deliver. It's a CITA service. We have to buy it via them. And every time we were disappointed, and we had to then extend our current. And procurement in that case is from a sole supplier. So it's from InfoBuild, and they the sole supplier of the web focus application tool. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Members, is that all the questions? Can we move over to part F? Okay, let's move to part F. So let's do the Auditor General's report first. From 173 to 180. Members, is there questions? Can we, in the book, in your book, the Auditor General's questions, is there no questions on that? So we're going to move to the appropriation statement, the annexures, the notes and the annexures. So we're going to deal with everything now going forward. Is there any questions, members? Okay, member Lekker first. Member Lekker, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on the second last paragraph on page 189. Yes, underspending is due to slower than anticipated filling of posts within the Office of the Western Cape Children's Commissioner. We had 2 meetings, and in those 2 meetings, as the committee, there was a clear conversation or an expression of dissatisfaction around issues of pressure from the Office of the Children's Commissioner in relation to the filling of vacancies. And this concerns me a lot because if there's a slight indication of pressure that is exerted to a point that the Children's Commissioner states that she has no interest in reapplying in the post as and when it's going to be re-advertised because of the pressure and the extent that it has gone to change her personality as a person. And I'm raising this so that going forward, there is a willingness to attend to issues of filling of vacancies because they add pressure to the staff that you have at the office. And my concern, Chair, would be around if there is an intention to resign. Obviously, one gives a stipulated amount of a cooling off period. And I'm interested in understanding why is it that there seems to be delays in filling such vacancies? If there's a resignation, it gives an opportunity for one to preempt, plan properly so that there is no delays. And I want to ask, is there a willingness to exert pressure from the Office of the Children's Commissioner in particular? And if there's a plan, can that be shared? Or can we try and expedite the issue of filling of vacancies? Because seemingly it's a heavy burden in the Office of the Children's Commissioner. Thank you.
Madam Councillor, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, on page 200 on the notes of the annual financial statements, I just want to get some clarity. It's a question I asked with the AG and I was referred to the department. I think there on note 17, unauthorized expenditure is measured, blah, 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 approved by Parliament or the Provincial Legislature with funding in the related funds are received or approved by Parliament or Provincial Legislature without funding, blah, blah, blah. Now, I want to understand in terms of what this note says, at what point in the process does Parliament and Provincial Legislature is able to assert this role or obligation placed here in this note? So I'm just trying to understand from your process, given I think issues of and I'm asking in general terms, you know, just to understand the process as you also had to explain, and hopefully you can send us DG what that framework so that we can be able to better appreciate the technical aspects of the process. If you can just educate me on that one. The second one is on page 214 under contingent liabilities and contingent assets. I'm trying to understand here that it is said under the year under review, 17 procedures for incapacity leave and ill health retirement were reviewed. What does this mean? Maybe just in simple layman terms. 72 procedures. Is it people that the department would have declared as part of the employees, you know, incapacitated to continue with the work? What does this mean in simple terms? I see there it says 7 cases were declined with 7 cases pending, and possibly you can update us where this matter is and why you are unable to measure the contingent asset liability thereof. Thanks.
DG, I can just ask 2 questions. On page 192 and then the note on page 198. Note 12 on page 198 refers to loans and receivables. Revenue fund reduced substantially by almost 2/3 as causes. If we can just understand the from 647 to 1.3, the reason for this and what is the future outlook on this reduction. If you can just look at that 133 and maybe just another question on page 206. Again, you'll see there's almost a 50% increase from the previous year. if you can give explanation. Then also a massive increase from that is, I'm just looking here now, the 3 talks about property payments and rental and hiring. It's massive increase from the previous year. It's if you can see what's that transport? I'm just checking now. Transport. The first one is property payments. 2022 to 3058, and then you have rental and hiring from 5 to 158. If you can just explain the massive increase, is there benefits in all of that? Thank you very much.
Chair, maybe let's start with the last question. I mean, on page 206, the increase in, we call it property payments from just over 2 million to 3 million. That is actually set out in a note on page 208. So your municipal services jumped from 76,000 to 124,000. And obviously, a lot of that is also to do with, energy and all that stuff. Then you've got property maintenance and repairs increasing from 91,000 to 240,000. And then the big jump from 1.8 million to 2.6 million relates to obviously gardening services, cleaning services at various offices, also some funding towards security services, fumigation services, as well as managing the cafeteria at PTI. And also, the fact that the increase related to management fees. Obviously, Chair, we're not just situated here in Cape Town. We also have the Provincial Training Institute, and there's a lot of activity happening in that space, particularly as it relates to security services. I mean, Dirkus can indicate the detail, but I mean, a lot of that is related to security services. But obviously, we need to protect, those institutions. Then, Chair, in relations to note 12 on page 198. I mean, that is really just an explanation of our accounting standard. What is it that we are using? So when we have an issue around loans or receivables, we basically just state that how do we recognize any loans or receivables in our statements. And I mean, that paragraph is also, I think, self-explanatory. It also deals with when we write off, any of these, that we do that in relation to our own policy, our own debt or department's write-off policy. Louise will explain the issue on page 214. I don't know, Louise, if you maybe want to talk to that at the moment. It's the one in the middle of page 214. That's note 16.2.
Chair, in terms of the pillar cases, that's the procedures for incapacity leave and ill health retirement. Those cases are submitted. That's when sick leave has been utilized completely, the 30 days over the 3-year term. We submitted to Alexander Forbes, who's the health risk manager. And they come back, and after doing the assessment, they indicate if they recommend if we approve or decline. And then on DDG level in our department, consider the recommendation of the health risk manager and then approve or decline the request. So it can either be incapacity leave, it's just sick leave, or it can be ill health retirement. That's when someone also submits medical evidence indicating that they're not able to work anymore. So there's a difference between ill health retirement and incapacity. Yeah, and then the second one in terms of the government GEHS or the ILSF, that's our savings facility. This is managed outside of the Western Cape government. We deduct money which goes into GEHS and also the savings facility. So we just administer it and to provide it to GEHS. It's a separate process that we follow. So it's difficult to estimate who will be who has indicated that they resign and they now want to lay claim on their savings facility, or when do they buy a house? We can't predict that, because if they want to buy a house, they can use their savings facility to pay a deposit. Thank you.
Chair, I've got two more questions to respond to. On page 200, I think that's a question that was raised by a member on Kontlo on unauthorized expenditure. Now, the definition of unauthorized expenditure is set out in the PFMA. It's really two matters. You can either overspend your vote, and if you overspend your vote, that's unauthorized, or if you incur expenditure that's not aligned to your program description, then that's also unauthorized expenditure. Now, in relation to our vote, on page 164, you will see that this department do not have any unauthorized expenditure last year, and we don't even have any unauthorized expenditure this year. And in fact, we've got no balance. So even for previous years, it's not been authorized as yet. We've got no balance. So Member Nkundla, how this would work in practice? This is a process that's run by the Treasury. So generally, they will do an assessment on all the unauthorized expenditures across all the departments in the entire Western Cape government. And the only way to get it authorized is actually to come to the legislature. They will generally prepare a finance act. And for those members that's been in this legislature for years, we haven't seen one of those in many years. And then, yeah, it's been long time ago, because we generally don't overspend our budgets. I mean, that's just simply not allowed, or we wouldn't spend on something that's not aligned to the program descriptions. But then the Treasury prepare a finance act. They will then come to Parliament, and then Parliament can deal with it in two ways. Parliament can say that we authorize the expenditure with funding. It's like an appropriation act. Or Parliament can say that we authorize the unauthorized expenditure, but with no funding. That then means that it will become a first charge against their budget in the new year. If it comes with funding, then it would be a normal appropriation that is made by Parliament. That would be a charge against the revenue fund, and that appropriation would obviously go to the department or the vote, and it would be reflected, in the annual appropriation statement. So, Member Nkundla, that's generally, how that process work. Chair, my last question that I need to respond to is on the issue of the Children's Commissioner. Now, we've had a long explanation in our normal session. I must state in this committee that that generally from a governance perspective, we've got a very good relationship with the Children Commissioner. As an accounting officer, I meet with her, quite regularly on any issues relating to the Children's Commission. Obviously, she reports directly to Parliament. Prem and I fully understand it. Obviously, she's accountable, or her office is accountable to me in relation to the expenditure. So we make sure, whenever we appoint people or we incur expenditure, that it's in terms of rules and regulations and also the policies of our department. When it relates to the appointment of staff, the issue in the Children's Commission is that for the last 3-4 years, they always had sufficient budget to appoint people. It is really an issue of getting the appropriate people, because it's a new office. There isn't a lot of people with that kind of experience. And what, in addition, she also experienced was that she would appoint the staff, because obviously those staff are public servants. They're actually appointed in the department. They are not appointed, like her, that's appointed, or not appointed, that's actually, there through legislation. So we take them through the entire process. We appoint them on PERSAL, and then we would allocate them to the Office of the Children's Commissioner. So you had a couple of resignations in the recent time. And I mean, Louise is here. There were 1 or 2 positions at deputy director level where I think we had to go out 3 times, to get appropriate people. Now, if we take 2 to 3 months turnaround to fill a position, one can just understand if you need to go out 3 times. So you advertise twice, and the 3rd time you try and head out, and then you don't get people, that can easily take, a full year. What we've done in the process, our member Leka, is we've even seconded people, from our program to actually go and assist the Children's Commissioner in our office, to go and assist them, particularly with the admin work and all of that. But the big challenge was really finding appropriate people. What we've also done, Chair, is the money didn't disappear into our department, because that money is ring-fenced. It is actually earmarked by Provincial Treasury. So any underspending by the Children Commissioner have been rolled over And in fact, she's allowed to actually appoint the people. It is really just around the quality of getting quality people into the system and also losing people, in the office of the Children's Commissioner. But my commitment is to support her. I've given it to her over the last 4 years. It is just challenging, Chair. And generally with some of these institutions that you set up like new, you actually get these initial challenge, but we find ways to actually get around some of the stuff. So I've also asked my office, Louise, to say that the current positions that are vacant, that those positions actually be expedited so that we can get it out in the market and try and assist it. But I mean, there's no issue, as I said, between the department and obviously, the CC, and we are putting measures in place to expedite the filling of the vacancies, because we can understand it's a very difficult environment, for her to work in. But notwithstanding that, she's really been doing some good work, in the system, particularly around children. And I mean, my department, I have been supporting her for the last 4 years at least.
If I can just have a follow-up on the Children Commission question. The reason, according to the Commissioner, the reason that the post cannot be filled is because of they've got master's degrees and they get appointed on a level 9, very low junior level, but they've got all these qualifications. And that is why, people cannot retain positions, and that's why people don't apply for the positions. So it's junior level, they are appointed, but they've got the qualifications. So that she says is the problem with retaining people and also, recruiting people with those qualifications. I don't know if the members can remember that, but that was one of the major concerns that they cannot retain. So I don't know, maybe you must look at that. Master's degrees people go in as assistant director, a senior administration officer.
Sure, I mean, it is a general issue. Obviously, within the public service, we set minimum criteria. I mean, there's Louise. In most of the cases, you would find people having more qualifications than the minimum criteria, which is actually also a good sense, in it. And what also happens in many of the cases, people may have honors or master's degree, but a lot of them comes with almost no experience. So you have somebody who would have a master's but no experience, and then they would come in and apply for positions as ASDs, because obviously the market is also tight out there. So if you have a master's and you've got no qualifications, you will struggle to get into a deputy director positions, because generally that position would ask for X amount of years in experience. And then people come in lower, and as soon as they get the 2 or the 3 years, they can now suddenly start to apply for other positions. We see it across the Western Cape government in many of the departments. But I mean, the one thing that we encourage is for people to actually empower themselves, go back to university, study, learn more, etc. Because when the opportunity presents itself, they must be ready to take it up.
Member Piet Lekker, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Mine, Chair, is just a comment, and I think this has been raised before in the committee by Member Nkondlo, to say the Office of the Children's Commissioner, as it is, maybe needs to be empowered properly, like all Section 9 institutions. Because from what I'm hearing today, interviews are conducted by the Department of the Premier, whereas this is supposed to be an independent kind of arrangement. So I think even though it's a matter for another debate, it has to be echoed again, because it has been said before that like all other institutions, including that one of Thuli Madonsela, it has to be outside of the office of the Premier for it to stem its authority. Thank you, Chair.
DJ?
Chair, I mean, that issue sits in the legislature. I mean, the law is there. So, I mean, I'm sure the legislature will take it up. But I mean, I just want to also indicate that all the interviews within the Children's Commissioner's office, she's actually part of it. Because remember, the staff that gets appointed there, they are public servants, and if you're a public servant, you need to be appointed in a particular department. It's only herself that is a statutory appointment, but she's involved in making the decisions around her office. Whether she should be a Schedule 9 or 10, I mean, I don't have a view on that.
Members, is there any other further questions before I wrap this up? Member Nkondlo?
Chair,
just one last question on page 223. On the minor capital assets under investigations. I see that there's some assets under investigation that could not be verified in terms of the particular financial year stock take. Maybe colleagues can just indicate to us what are the limitations in your asset registry process. Was there a specific problem in this particular financial year, or is there something in as far as this as these investigations, which I'm sure some would have been concluded by now, if that update could be provided? Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions? Is that the last question? DG?
Thanks, Chair. Just in terms of the process, we still have officials working from home 2 days a week and 3 days at the office. So when our asset officials come around, often the official that needs to present the assets for verification is not available. And the second opportunity also not available. And we have about 25,000 assets in total. So our stock takes 6 months to 9 months. We can only do testing once or twice. Doesn't mean the asset is lost. It simply means it could not be verified at the appointed time. These assets not under investigation, this and the major, in total, it's less than 1% of our total population. Our population is 25,266 assets that we verify. We also don't necessarily stop the verification. We do continue slightly after, but the next verification process kicks in almost immediately, couple of months, and you have to start again with next year's verification. So there are some practicalities. It's not the system. It's rather the availability of staff to present their assets. That's it.
Thank you very much. Is that it, Member Coulter?
I hope when you write, colleagues, you write in a manner that must represent exactly how you answer. Because when you answer as if these things, have just been blown out of proportion and they come from your own reports. So I hear your response that it's a matter of, scheduling. That's what I'm taking, that what is here is just a matter of scheduling, that when people, the asset register had to be verified, people are not there. And I'm sure it would have helped also in the note you make, you sort of indicate that, so that when a person is reading, and I'm raising this point once again, this is a public document. Imagine of ordinary members of the public who must read. It just helps to then explain context, because at most people are not necessarily yourselves would deal with these issues on a day-to-day basis. So I'm just pleading for context, so that indeed when we read, we don't believe that maybe this is an issue. Because when it said it's under investigation, things, were not verified. Obviously, somebody who is not in that environment is not going to have, your information. So I think if you are writing for the public, please put the public as interest and shoes, when you are writing. Thanks.
Very good point. Thank you very much. I think it's just a comment. Do you want to comment on that?
Chair, I take that. And it's actually something that we need to take up actually with National Treasury, with our own PT, because the wording comes from standardized templates, if I can use that. So when the AG comes in, they look at the template. NT tells you that this is the template for your Fs. And obviously, I think if one talks about under investigation, and what I hear the member is saying is probably assets not yet verified. Because under investigation, almost think that there's something fishy going on. So Driekers, my commitment is that we will take it up, and even the issue on page 222, which is more or less the same thing. But this table really just talks about minor capital assets not yet verified. And Chair, that's in the context of we have 560 million rand worth of assets in this department. And I mean, here we're talking about, 736,000 rand of minor assets, and obviously you can think for yourself, I mean, we have CI in our department, the small little things that we need to find. But I buy the point, and Chair, we will deal with it. So Chair, from my side, I've just got 3 matters that I got from this meeting that we need to provide to you. The irregular expenditure framework, we will send that to you. The second issue is that the staff members exits per program. And then the third issue is the management action plans on those that have been implemented, the 10, and the 7 in progress, just a detail. That's the 3 issues that I got from this meeting. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think that's the end of the questions. I was going to ask the DG and the Premier to do the closing remarks. Now, members, you must remember, every day I ask a different member to do the thank yous. So, Member Wyk, you'll be the first one to do the thank yous after the DG and the Premier. So every day a different member gets opportunity. Thank you very much. Premier, DG first and then Premier.
Chair, from my side, just to say thank you very much. I mean, again, we are committed to good governance in this department. Obviously, we want to work on enhancing our governance responses. We take SCOPA very serious. I mean, that's one thing in our department. And obviously, as member, Leke and Nkonde indicated that at the end of the day, this is a public document, and we need to do what we need to do to actually improve the quality of the document so that the public can actually understand it. So those comments and the recommendations that's been made, we will definitely take it up with PT and also with AXA and also with NT. Other than that, Chair, I just want to express my sincere appreciation to the department of the previous management team and for everyone that works, in this department, and that's so upholding, good governance as a principle in this department, and it actually becomes the thing, that we do every day. And also, obviously, to the Premier as the EA, for I think just pushing us all the time to improve as a department. And ultimately, it is about building a government that people trust so that we can actually just improve our services continually. And I mean, lastly, also to you as a committee, thanks for the questions. I mean, we take it in good spirit. It takes us further as a department, and obviously it pushes the accountability agenda, which is one of the values of this government. But thank you very much. Tim.
I thought he was going to brag with it in the beginning, but thank you very much, Chair, and to the committee. I want to echo what the DG just said. Thank you very much to the team. When you get to that level, to stay there means you've got to work hard to stay there. It's, you make one mistake and you slip back. And so, I mean, we do appreciate that the team continually focuses on getting better and better, and so you see those numbers getting smaller and smaller, and it's tough to stay there. But I congratulate every single one of them. They work very, very hard in making sure that we get those outcomes. And again, once thank you to you, Chair, and to the committee. This is a public document, as was said, and it's the public's money, and we've got to make sure it's spent in the best interests of our citizens. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Van Wyk, over to you to do the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to thank the Premier, the DG, and the team for their presentations today. Some of us also sit on the Standing Committee of the Premier and Constitutional Matters, so we've had a full day of it. And I think it is quite exceptional to see that you've got a 2 billion worth of expenditure, you've got 1,000 employees, and you've got a very clean audit here. And I think you cover a very wide spectrum of activities, and therefore it is very pleasing to see what level of accountability here is and how you've presented it. So thank you very much. It's also been our first run now from a public accounts meetings, and I imagine it's going to get a little tougher after this because the numbers get a little bit bigger and probably a lot more complex. But I think your complexity here is much appreciated and the work that you've done. So thank you very much for the presentation today and for the work over the past year.
Thank you very much, Premier. Thank you, DG. The meeting's adjourned. It's just the members that's going to stay behind for our resolution. Thank you very much.
provincial treasuries instructional notes to explain how things gets removed, Chair. Chair, there was a resolution, Chair, from yourself on page 165 under section E, the 30-day payments, if they can just make a note on how many days after 30 days a payment has been made going forward. And then Chairperson on page 200 on section or part F, page 200, note 17, at what point does note 17 kicks in? And the DG indicated that he can send the documentation, the framework for the provincial legislature, unauthorized and irregular expenditure. How does it work, etc. He can send us that, Chair. And then, Chair, regarding basically, yeah, that's basically it, Chairperson.
That it?
That's basically it, Chair.
Members, is there any additions that you must make to it? Is that it? You all captured. Thank you very much. I just want to address one matter quickly before we go. Just one matter. It's the SAPAC matter. We have an AGM invite for AGM the 8th and the 9th
of November.
And we are required to send 5 delegates to the AGM and our support staff. We had a meeting with chairpersons and that was the decision made. It's going to be Johannesburg. And is there anything else that I left out?
Chairperson, through you, Chair. So basically, Chair, we have received the letter today, this afternoon, Chair, from SAPAC, basically, which indicates that they require 5 members, Chair, from this committee and 2 support staff to support the members, etc. And it will be held at the OR Tambo International Airport, Chairperson, on the Friday, the 8th and the 9th, the Saturday, Chair. Both meetings starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. So, Chairperson, basically from a procedural point of view, Chair, of the 5 members that they're requesting, 3 is already the Council of Delegates, which the committee resolved that it will be yourself, Member Johnson and Member Lacker. So then it's just 2 more members, Chairperson, that the committee will have to choose here who will go with, so that we can start making logistical arrangements, Chairperson.
Remember, I think you know that there is some of the members that was on the executive was not re-elected. So now they must have a special AGM to elect members on the committee, and that's why. And then we've got a couple of topics that we're going to discuss there. So we have 3 members because it's the Council of Delegates, the 3. And now I'm just asking the committee for names so that the flights can be booked and that we can submit the names. We also received a letter today. Our subscription fee was paid for the 2 financial years that we requested. Remember, that was paid. But now the query 2017 and 2018, 2018 years. So our procedural officer is working on that to send them, because they cannot find the documents that it's been paid. But the last decision we made, that amount was paid for the 2 years that were the 2 years that were outstanding. So can we just get 2 more names to go to our SAPAC meeting? Is there nominations and proposals? Member Lecker?
Mr. Chair, I move to propose the name of Degracia Nobulumgongondlo.
I must just check now, because Member Nkondlo is an alternative member, so we must first look at our 7 members, the current members, not alternative members, but the current 7 members. That is the members we're referring to. Member Mumfumanen? That's fine. Member.
Can I just ask, because we're a bit depleted now, who are the permanent members again? You can just read us the list. May I propose Dr. Mbombo? No, she's not here, which is sort of in her absence. I realize that.
but if I could possibly propose her as a permanent member.
And then we have member Petrus of the PA that we can also propose. They've also asked for a multi-party. So that's the two names that we'll add to it. We'll see. They'll get the correspondence, and if it's affirmative, that is the members, the 5 members, and.
Two staff. Yes.
Are you going to take somebody with?
Chair, they have asked for 2 staff. Chair.
But no, it's a maximum of 5 and a maximum of 2.
2 staff. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't have to take 2. We don't have to take 5. We're taking the 5. So are you proposing another name for support staff?
Yeah, Chair is myself and Ms. Lizette Kluter, Chair.
Okay. Are you available to go with?
Yes.
Okay. You can. You can work it out. You can work it out. You can work it out between the 2 of you for support staff. But we've got the 5 members to attend.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Everything?
That's it.
That's everything, members. Thank you. The meeting's adjourned.
Chair, sorry, and then just through you, Chair, members, we are just waiting for the Auditor General for the presentation for tomorrow, Chair. I've just emailed them in the meeting for the.
Guys, we're gonna have to take them on tomorrow because we have not received any correspondence from the Auditor General for tomorrow's meeting.
For the
So
presentation.
for the presentation, we have not received. He's asked, I don't know how many times, Member Van Minden.
But I also just ask regarding tomorrow, as we have a chief whip here and we have yourself here, if maybe you could find the aircon technician who appears to have taken the afternoon off and just make the suggestion that getting the aircon going would be fantastic.
Emails has been sent and it's been sorted.
Have they been read?
Thank you very much.